Hello, my name is Joshua. Welcome to the League of Josh podcast. Today I have on someone that I've known for a while but haven't had the opportunity to sit down with, and that's Eric Lepke. Eric and I played against each other from the end of our club careers. So he was a U18 while I was U18, but he was playing up a year. So he won the national championship at U18, won the MVP award. From there, he went to Trinity Western, where he was named U Sport Rookie of the Year, All Rookie Team, three-time first team All-Canadian, U Sport Player of the Year in his final year. I believe he went 5 for 7 with championship banners, so he won either the Canada West or U Sport almost. He won one of those in every single year that he played. He is now playing in Italy, in Ravenna, I believe, and he's done a few stints with the national team. In his second year, he went and played overseas with the national team. And so it was really fun to have Eric on. He's a very intelligent person and someone that I've looked up to as a player and a competitor. He's unbelievably humble and a very intelligent human being. So I'm beyond grateful that I was able to sit down with Eric and have this conversation. And I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. Thanks. Yeah, man, I'm super excited to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on for a while now. I was just waiting for the right opportunity. So this seems like a good spot.
Perfect. Yeah, this is perfect.
I really want to talk to you today about creativity. I mean, you and I think that Trinity has a big part to play in that, but the creativity that you guys had as a team and you as yourself, you did some pretty cool stuff. And I want to know specifically a little bit about how the technological landscape, so access to video and access to all these different visual inputs, how that has impacted your creativity.
Yeah. All right. You want to just get rolling with it?
Yeah, why not?
All right, man. Yeah, I think that's a really cool thing about Trinity is Ben's always looking for just different, like new kind of things to try. He's never like stuck in one way. Like even I know like blockers, like middles like JVD and Van Berkel. Like Ben was teaching him to block a different way than he was maybe teaching like Jackson and Pierce and Aaron and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's always kind of learning and looking just for what's better and trying things out in different movements. So I think it just makes it makes practices super fun because he's like, oh, I saw this, or like this coach was talking about this, or like Long Beach is doing this, or this guy in Germany's doing this. So then we always just like tried it in practice. And like I remember my first year, like, you know, the Ngapeth like jump side set thing.
Yeah.
Like we just started doing it like in practice.
Mm-hmm.
And at first like we were really bad at it. Like it was hard. We're like, okay, like I don't know if it's gonna work. And then it just kind of like by repping it out, then the opportunities kind of present themselves in games. And then it just kind of opens the floor for us to try that. Like that's what I love about Ben is he gives us like the freedom in those moments to like just go for it.
Yeah.
There's a sick play of Jesse Elser like setting Pierce from like in his first year, and he just like went for it and it worked out and it was unreal. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I remember watching a video on you guys a bunch, and in your first year, I don't think anyone actually did the set. Like Adam would set you guys, and then you guys would go up and swing almost every single time.
Yeah.
And then we had a meeting at the end of the year, and Pat was like, "They're going to do it. Like they're going to start setting each other off of that." And then after you guys started setting each other, I saw your guys' middle start approaching. Then I was like, "Oh man, they're going to start setting middle off of this."
Yeah.
Like there's really there's no ceiling to where this is going.
Yeah, exactly. It just kind of like keeps evolving into different stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is really cool, I think. And then even like we played with a bunch of other stuff like overpass things, like with Derek, like jumping and like trying to side set Derek on overpasses. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it just kind of like became our thing. And then other teams started to do it, like UBC started doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Other teams started trying it. So I think it's cool for like growing the game.
Yeah.
You got to try it.
Yeah. And it looks like with the like with all the visuals that are available. I can go onto YouTube, whereas 20 years ago, Pat was telling us that you had to like send a video cassette, and it would take the full week to get there, and then you
Right.
could maybe do video on Thursday, and sometimes you couldn't even do video for a team because their cassette get lost in the mail or the coach doesn't mail it on time, and then you're totally hooped, and that's the only video that you have access to at all. But now we have, like I said, YouTube and all of these immediate visuals where I can go and watch VNL, or like Benjo's always posting about you guys and all of the overseas guys. It looks like he watches almost all of your guys' games on the weekends.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember Ben saying like when he was in college, he had no concept of what international volleyball even looked like because he could never watch it, and we can watch it like all the time whenever we want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and with volumetrics too. I don't know. Have you used volumetrics before?
Yeah, that angle's sweet.
Yeah, that angle's sweet, and it's just so nice. You can just like, okay, this guy plays here. Go watch all his actions, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes like 10 minutes versus even having to watch like the full game and then seeing that one play he does. You can just kind of go find snippets of everything. So
Yeah.
it's a cool world out there.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about being a volleyball player versus being a spectator, is that I never want to watch the side angle. Like I only want the angle from the back, but everything in international volleyball and any league is always from the sides.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's a little bit weird. Yeah. What do you think? What's the culture that creates creativity, and what do you think is an environment that you personally thrive in being creative yourself and developing that creativity?
I think it's just freedom. Like without freedom to just like go for it, and yeah, like just that TW, like it was okay to mess up. Like it was okay to mess up in practice, and we knew that we had the freedom to try these things. And that's the tough thing about like even being overseas now is like you feel a little more restricted sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and unless you're like, you almost have to gain that confidence first to be free versus if you know you're free, then you can try things when you're not confident with it yet. And I think that's really how you learn. And then once you get maybe confident in other things, like obviously in Gopeth, like he just tries whatever he wants because he's like kind of built up his own stature of who he is, and that's just who he is.
Mm-hmm.
For young guys and especially college guys, they're all still like learning technically so much that I think you need to have that freedom to just promote that kind of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to some guys that have played overseas, and it goes from college where you have this culture is already built up and there's this freedom and you know the coach and you develop a relationship with everyone on the team, and then you go
Mhm.
overseas and you're thrown into this team with a new coach, new guys, everyone has differing philosophies. And like I had one friend, Randy, and his coach last year in Sweden was saying you can't get blocked, like ever. That's part of the rules for our team. Like we don't miss serves and we don't get blocked. Like you always hit around the block. And he's an off the block hitter, so he gets
Yeah.
stewed once every 8 times, but he's always off the block. So he found that really difficult in kind of adjusting to different coaches and different philosophies.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so tough. Yeah. Like this year our coach was like at the beginning he wanted us to do like the jump side set
Mm-hmm.
and stuff because maybe he'd seen video of us doing it before. But we messed up a couple times and then he just called it. Like he was like, no, no more. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of too bad like when coaches do that, like they don't maybe let players expand to their full potential if they're limiting their kind of skill set almost, or their
Mm-hmm.
growth. So
Yeah, yeah. I'm doing a lecture earlier this month in a few weeks on personality development, and a big part of that is neuroplasticity and how we need to fail to actually get better at things.
yeah,
And in terms of personality, like you know that you're learning when you're failing.
yeah,
Like that's just
like
a part of the whole
stress,
process. Pardon?
like positive stress almost.
Yeah, like you need that stress, you need epinephrine and norepinephrine, and
Yeah,
then you trigger this acetylcholine neurotransmitter that kind of targets the space, and then during your deep sleep rest,
yeah,
that's when your brain is actually changing. It's not in the moment. So like a big
hmm
thing for me for coaching any team that I've coached, I always get them to spin serve.
Oh,
And I
nice.
was coaching a women's team in the second division in Denmark, and like some of them absolutely hated it because they would just mess up. Like they would serve balls under the net, and the whole time I just reinstated the idea that I don't care if we're making mistakes as long as we're getting
Yeah.
better day to day.
Oh man, that's really cool. I love that concept.
Yeah, I'm excited to get back into coaching and keep going with that.
Yeah.
Um, there was an interview with Ben Joe when you guys won in Laval, but it was your semifinal versus Laval, and you guys were down 2-1, and nobody was hitting their serves hard, and he came into the huddle, and you came into the huddle and you said, hey, we've got to hit our serves hard. Like, that's a part of our team, that's part of our culture. We have to go for it. If we lose, we're losing going for it. And he said that was a big step in your progression as a leader. And I wanted to kind of know when you flipped that switch and how you flipped that switch, how you went from like Eric Lepke, Rookie of the Year, and all these other things, kind of a quieter guy on the court, to being like Eric Lepke, leader.
Yeah. Oh man, a little throwback here, but yeah, I remember that. That was we were just sitting in a timeout, and we were like, we were hitting passive serves and we were missing our serves, and we just weren't putting them into trouble, and then we were kind of just shooting ourselves in the foot. So I remember talking to the guys like just keep hitting our serves. Like a big thing for us all year was we focused on like green chip mentality. Green chip serving is what we called it.
And what's that?
It's kind of like, so if it's back to like a gambling analogy, like if you're playing at the roulette table and you're like just you're tossing around random bets and numbers all the time, then your outcome is going to be random. But if you're putting like the same chip forward every time, like you know what your outcome is going to be. So like it's a probable outcome. So if you have like the same routine, like the same bounces, the same toss, the same everything, and you hit your serve, even though you've missed like, let's say 5 in a row, you can go back and make that individual serve, keep it the same. So it was like all year, it was like green chip, like go back, hit your serve. We don't care like where you were before or anything like that. And it actually goes back to, I don't know if you've heard of Andrea Becker. She was like a psychologist on the 2016 USA men's team who was big on this. Spraw just hired her because of like her brain. Like she knew nothing about volleyball, and she came and just studied all the serves and everything, and like would talk to the guys about the serves, and most guys would be like, oh, it was a bad toss, or like I was trying to take some off of that because I missed a bunch, and that would actually just cause them to miss more serves. It was like trying to change something, changing the probability. Like you change something, you're changing the whole probability of it. So the idea is of just like keeping it the same consistently, no matter what you are. Like don't think of the serves as like 20 serves. Think of each serve as its own individual thing, and then do your routine for that. So I think I was just really reminding the guys of that and being like hit your serve, guys. Like we gotta keep our aggression up, hit your serve. And it ended up working out really well for us. Yeah, that was a crazy game. That was a really crazy game. The fans were nuts too, so it was really fun.
Yeah, I've heard funny things about the Laval fans.
Yeah.
There was one of our alumni his name was Chobel, and he was from France. He played for the junior team, and he was Rookie of the Year and all this stuff. And I guess when they went to Laval for nationals, it was in their old gym, and they had like thousands of stands. Thousands of fans. They brought in all of these extra stands, and Chobel went up like right in pregame. Everyone's warming up, and Chobel's just standing at the edge of one of the stands screaming, "You are not the real French. I am the real French." Like just screaming at these people that they weren't real French. He was the real French. And like guys had to go over and drag him away because he was just standing there. Wouldn't warm up. He was just yelling at these people because they were playing Laval that game. And they had to drag him out.
There's a sick photo of I think Jacob Kern serving with like basically like blow horns behind him and like fans going crazy behind him. Such a sick photo.
Yeah.
Also that game we had like we had security like pull a guy away from our huddle because he came into like while Ben Joe was talking in the timeout.
Hmm.
He was just like screaming in our huddle. Nice thing is you don't understand what they're saying, but just good energy then.
Wild, man. French Canadians.
Oh yeah.
Um, I've seen you post a few times about like literature that you're into, like C.S. Lewis is one that I've seen you go to a few times. And I want to know how that has helped you develop in like a more personal way. And I guess alongside with volleyball, but how your
Mhm.
reading and studying is kind of aided in that.
Yeah, well, I take um I take my faith pretty seriously.
Hmm.
So I've been really like diving into it this year. The nice thing about pro is you just have a lot of time to kind of like do your own thing. So I've got a pretty solid morning routine now where I just really try to focus on like my spiritual self in the morning.
Hmm.
Um, and I just find the more I focus on that, like the better everything else is going. So I wake up and I got my routine down. I take a cold shower. I meditate with Headspace, and then I read my Bible for like 45 minutes, some Old
Hmm.
Testament, New Testament, a Psalm, and it's just like the most like refreshing kind of foundation for my day. Um, and then like some really cool authors like C.S. Lewis, Timothy Keller, and then I'm reading some George Mumford right now too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, those are just some like authors that I've been kind of following right now to just to learn more and just kind of focus on my like spiritual development versus having so much focus on my physical development. And I think the two are hand in hand. And a lot of athletes maybe miss that spiritual development and mindfulness stuff. I know it's been pushed in sport a lot recently, but it's pretty easy to neglect it. But yeah, the Screw Tape Letters, that book specifically has been like just a really cool read for me. It's basically like 31 chapters of, it's a apocalyptic genre. That's the
Hmm.
word. So it's like a senior devil is writing to a junior devil.
Hmm.
Um, and each, like the devil has like, every person has a devil assigned to them. And it's kind of like the underlying, like the humans don't know it because they don't want them to know, but it's just really interesting, like how everything's talked about things throughout your day, maybe certain things in your life that are like, oh man, like I got to be careful for that with my relationships, or I got to like watch my thoughts with that, or just certain things that have been really cool. And then I think it just promotes self growth and um, yeah, I really like it. I find it fascinating. So it's a really cool read. Like every chapter is like no more than 2 pages long,
Hmm.
but it takes me like 30 minutes just to get through it all because I'm like, oh, that doesn't even make sense. Like, okay, I got to reread that. I got to look up this word. I don't know what that means.
Hmm.
Just like underlining and circling stuff. So yeah, I've been really getting into that a lot this year, more than I was in college for sure, just with the time. I've really been enjoying it too. So it's been great.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis is a really cool. He was a very spiritual guy. Like he was a very faith-based person, and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that
yeah.
comes out in a lot of his literature. He has lots of cool archetypal ideas, and lots of his stuff comes from the Bible and religion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, man, the Inklings are just so cool. I love all that stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, the guys writing Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis doing Narnia. So
Yeah,
have you read any of his books?
yeah. I've read The Magician's Nephew and Narnia when I was younger,
Oh, nice.
but I think I've got to get into a few other ones, like the one you were talking about. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, the Screw Tape one's really cool, man. It's a hard dive. It's like that to me is not relaxing. It's like, okay, I'm ready to focus and like try to like just really think here. So
Yeah.
it's
With faith in mind, I wanted to ask about the leap of faith with Sam and you guys before you went to Italy. Can you just tell me about that?
yeah, man, for sure. It was such a crazy year actually. Like even just our whole relationship was pretty crazy. Do you want me to like quickly just bring you through it all?
Yeah, I really want to, like, I'm super interested in the marriage in particular, but I want to know like where
Okay.
you guys met, kind of what the process was, doing long distance and all of those things. Because I'm assuming you guys did long distance while she was still
Hmm.
playing.
Yep. Yep. Um, so I actually met her the first time in Colorado, August 2019.
Hmm.
But I honestly thought I'd never see her again. Like I just chatted to her a little bit, and that was that. And then we started chatting again in October, and just kind of really hit it off. Um, Classic, like just Instagram, hit it off over Instagram, and then
Hmm.
like phoning like every day basically. And then I took the leap to go to France over Christmas to like hang out with her because she was going to be coming back to Minneapolis where she's from. I'm from Winnipeg, so it's like 6-7 hours apart. Um, and we were like, okay, well, we'd see each other like one day if we'd overlap. Like when she was in Minneapolis,
Hmm.
I could drive down and I'd see her one day versus if I go there, we'd get to hang out for like 9 days.
Right.
And she had some extra money in her contract for like family or friends to fly out, so it actually worked out really nice.
Sweet.
Um, so yeah, that was like trip of a lifetime. That was a huge step for us. And we just were like, yeah, we want this. So we started dating. Um, she got to come out to BC in February, um, and yeah, got to see that, which was sweet. Meet some of my teammates. My parents were out that weekend, so it was great. Um, and then the whole COVID thing kind of like blew up in March, and I went back to, well, we were in Winnipeg when it happened. She was back in France. She was trying to figure out how to fly back. And during that time, I'd gone back to BC, just kind of packing up my things and like trying to make the decision of like, oh, should I go home or like, should I stay out here and just like hang out with the guys and have a good time? Or should I like pack up my things and try to go see Sam? So I think she flew into Minneapolis on a Wednesday.
Hmm.
And I just felt like, man, like I don't know if the borders are gonna close. Like I just need to like go home, drop all my stuff off, and then maybe I'll head out to her place on the weekend. Um, so I actually stopped in Pierce's. I left Thursday. I packed up all my stuff Thursday, stopped at Pierce's place in Banff for night. And by the time I was in Medicine Hat on Friday, I was, um, my dad texted me, my mom texted me, I was filling up for gas. And Sam had texted me too that the borders were closing Friday night at
Hmm.
midnight, like Eastern time. And I was like, man, this sucks. Like, do I go home and like wait out till they open again? Or do I just like go for it and like drive, like just like cross somewhere in Sask or something?
Hmm.
And I was just like, okay, I'm going for it. I just like, it added like 4 hours to my trip. So it was like a 14-hour day turned into like an 18-hour day.
Hmm.
Um, but I left pretty early, so I was okay. But I crossed the border at like 6 p.m. So, and I was like, yeah, I don't know how long I'm gonna be down here. Maybe a couple weeks, like I'm guessing. Um, and she was the crossing guard was sweet. She's like, okay, yeah, cool. So she let me down, and I ended up staying in Minneapolis for 3 months with them and her family,
Hmm.
just because like we'd like wait like, okay, they're not open this month. Like, well, I don't have to be anywhere actually. This is weird. So yeah, I might as well stay. Like, I don't want to go home and then like it'll be great to see my family for like a week, but then I'll be like, why am I here? You know? So
Yeah.
it just made sense for me to stay. And it was actually a great period of time for me to like really like get to know her family because I'd been there for like I was there for 100 days straight, I think. Maybe it was like 96.
Hmm.
But we were spending every day together, like 24 hours. We're hanging out, like doing quarantine, hanging out with her sisters, her family. So it was awesome. Like it was a great time. I ended up having to go back to Canada for Kern's wedding actually, and then I
Hmm.
did a little bit of training with the national team. But before I left, I'd asked her parents already for their blessing, because I wanted to propose that summer and get married the next summer. Um, so they were cool with it. I'd already ordered the ring, um, and I picked it up when I went back to Steinbach. And the plan was hopefully she could come up to Canada before I left for Italy so I could propose. Um, and she actually drove up. We hadn't seen each other for a month. We were a month apart. She drove up and we met at the border, but they didn't let her cross. So, and they didn't let us talk to each other. And it was like terrible. Like she was like, I hadn't seen her. I was like I could see her. She could wave in her car,
Mm-hmm.
but like we weren't allowed to like communicate or like even like talk or like, and it was like awful. I was so frustrated because I was like, okay, we're not criminals. Like she'll quarantine. We'll do all that stuff. Like it's just so frustrating. Like we just felt so choked and trapped. Um, and we had talked about like, oh, we should just get married and like this stuff, but we didn't think we actually would. But I ended up planning. Sorry, this is a big detail. The crossing guard there told me, he's like, I've heard. He's like, hey, listen, man. He was an old guy. He was super nice. He's like, hey, I've heard there's like people been flying down to the States and they're letting people fly down. They can't fly up here, but like Canadians can still fly down to the States. It's kind of like a unwritten rule.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, really? So I looked into it, and like for sure enough, there was a bunch of articles about people flying down to see family and fiancés and all that stuff. So I booked my ticket, flew down the next day. During that 24 hours, I planned out the engagement with her mom and a couple of her friends. Um, and we got married. Oh no, we didn't get married. We got engaged on the 30th of July.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, also going down there through customs, I've never been so grilled. Like,
Yeah.
like I was like grilled so hard. They were going through everything, like my notebook, my wallet. I had to show them my contract, um, like everything. They were flipping through everything I had. And the guy gave, apparently because I didn't have a return flight booked yet,
Mm-hmm.
he like could have not let me across, but he gave me 9 days in the country. While this is also going on, I'm like waiting to get my visa, and as soon as I get my visa, I have to go to Italy. So I was really worried, like if I was like gonna have to leave while I was down there or something. But he gave me 9 days. Said if I'm not back in Canada in 9 days, major issues. Because I told him, I'm like, I'm going down to get married. Like that's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So he let me cross. And then yeah, we got engaged, and then we got married 2 days later. Like we signed the papers 2 days later um, at her grandparents' cabin. We just did like a little ceremony with me, her mom, and her grandparents. Her mom's what's it called? She can marry people.
Mm-hmm.
So we just did like this little ceremony. We were like, this is stupid. Like we know we're gonna get married anyway, and we just don't want to be like really forced like to not be able to see each other. And I'm like so thankful that we did, because like if we didn't, I would have left and I wouldn't have seen her still since July.
Right.
So it would have really sucked. But she ended up, we drove up together, crossed the border. They like were pretty skeptical about us, but
Mm-hmm.
after like an hour of talking and all showing them everything we could, they let us cross. And then we went to Italy together a couple weeks later once I got my visa, and yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah. So she was able to come to Italy with you because you guys were married.
Yeah, exactly. And she was able to, she even got to fly home for Thanksgiving and come back because she got a residency card here
Oh,
and
sweet.
everything. Yeah, so she was like, she could even stay longer than 90 days because
Mm-hmm.
we were married and stuff. So it was just looking back at it, it was like, okay, that was probably the smartest decision we've made.
Right.
And yeah, looking back, it's like, man, I don't know. Yeah, it would have just sucked. Like it would have been a totally different year
Hmm.
without her here. So yeah, it was crazy, but it was worth it. And we kind of kept it on the DL a little bit because we didn't want to like, I don't know, we didn't want to take away the season of engagement and just, it was just a lot that happened. And, but then eventually we were like, we're married, like who cares? We'll just tell people. So yeah,
Very, very cool. And now she's in the first professional league in America now.
yeah, she is. Yeah,
What was
she's doing,
the process for that? Like being around for that and kind of seeing how that evolved. That's a pretty huge step for volleyball in general, I think, especially in North America, because in Europe it's huge. Tons of people love volleyball. It's way,
Mhm.
way bigger than it is here. And so now that it's becoming more of a thing in North America, I think that we're going to see it grow over time.
Yeah, I know that there was like the first she heard of it was like last March. I think there was like Karch Karai and like Jordan Larson were meeting with people trying to put something together the last couple of years.
Hmm.
And they got some real decent donors and sponsors for it to put the league together. Um, and we thought it'd be best because then she could like just be with me for most of the season, but still get to play
Hmm.
and kind of have that pro experience. So um, it ended up working out really well. Um, but I think it's going to be great for the sport. Like girls volleyball is like the number one played sport in America for like high school and junior high kids, but there's like
Hmm.
no pro league. So I think there's a big audience to tap into for that. And yeah, I really hope like they're doing a great job. Like I've been watching all the draft nights and all the matches, and they're doing a great job promoting it. And yeah, I hope it can maybe move into something bigger, maybe something that is kind of like an all year thing or
Hmm.
like a little bit longer than 2 months. And maybe one day it can have a guys league. If there's enough attraction, but yeah, I think it's going to be great for the sport. And just for like young girls to see that there's like a pro league in America, I think is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Um, because I feel like a lot of girls after college just kind of stop and don't take the leap to go overseas. It's a pretty big leap, but if they could play in play in their home country, I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, even people not having to go to school to continue playing volleyball seems like a really big pull as well. I know that was something that I think I think Sharon from the Canadian side of things was one of the only people. I think he's the only person on the national team that didn't go to university. He's the only person that doesn't have that box filled. So his
Yeah,
ability to go overseas, and now that that's becoming more of a thing here, where there's potential at least for the professional league to develop and people to not have to go to school before to continue playing volleyball.
yeah, yeah. I think that'd be amazing. Because it's kind of ironic how it works. Like you think of like NBA guys or NFL guys or players, they do like a one and done anyway
Yeah.
because they have to. But it'd be cool if like they could keep growing, and yeah, I think it'd be fantastic.
What was the name of the league that she's playing in, just so that people can check it out?
Athletes Unlimited.
Athletes Unlimited.
Yeah, they're actually they're doing a professional girls softball league, which I know is huge,
Cool.
volleyball and lacrosse. So they've kind of, I think this is their second league they're doing, and they're doing a lacrosse one maybe over the summer.
Oh, sweet. I've got to
Yeah.
check that out. I'm a big lacrosse fan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
man. I've never like watched it, but apparently it's our national sport, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Hockey and lacrosse. Yeah, lacrosse is it has a shot clock, so it's like basketball, and I think it's just way faster pace.
Right.
Yeah, and it's funny because the ball is the same size as a puck. The net is half the size of a hockey net, and the goalie is twice the size of a goalie in hockey. But the
That's
scoring is way higher. Like you'll almost always get into double digits unless your goalie's super sick.
really
Yeah,
wow.
but people are just unbelievably accurate, and yeah, you have a lot of control. It's a super fun sport. I played it a lot growing up.
Yeah, I gotta check that out more.
Yeah, it's super sweet. Um, I want to talk about how I think as a culture, we tend to idealize people that are kind of at the top of their hierarchies in the sport they play or the field that they're in. Like we really tend to think that people have the perfect lives. And I want to ask you if there's with such a prestigious resume, have you ever had a time where you felt lost, or you've been told you can't do something, or anything along those lines, where you're kind of at a lower level and you have to find your path again?
Yeah, that's a great question, deep question. Yeah, I think there's just such a common, like, it's one of the tough things with the new age, social media and everything, is like the perception of people seems so great. Like all the Instagram photos and the videos, like everyone just sees the positives, because why would you, like, you want to brand yourself and post like good things, you want good content.
Hmm.
Um, but I think everyone's got stuff going on and dealing with things. So I would say this year has just been, it's been an amazing year, like so many great opportunities and so many cool blessings, but it was a tough year for sure too, like just mentally. Um, um, like back, like the way the season ended in 2020, and just kind of the uncertainty of the world really in the summer, and then like being married and like feeling that responsibility as a husband now, and then switching gears and playing volleyball as a job, not just it was technically a job at school, but like actually playing for money and having a little bit more pressure with that and wanting to do well in that and being in a good league. I think there was just a lot of different like new stressors in life. So there's for sure some times where I would come back after practice and I would just be like, just so frustrated or like feel terrible. Like I know what I need to do to be a better player, but I'm not doing it. And I found myself kind of molding everything together, and um, I'd be at home and I would be thinking like, oh man, I got to be better, do this better at volleyball. But then I'd be at volleyball and I'd be like, oh man, I just want to be at home and like being a good husband and hanging out with Sam. So just figuring out how to separate the two, I think, was big, and kind of have like, okay, volleyball is volleyball. I'm gonna sure do what I need to do at home, like stretch a bit and watch some video. But if I'm not doing that, I'm like not thinking about it. And then, but when I'm there, I'm gonna be like fully dialed in. I'm gonna like get my stretches in, get my warm up in, and journal there and stuff. So I would say just for me, that was a tough part of the year. Was just, yeah, learning how to separate the two,
Hmm.
um, and really, yeah, that was my one of my biggest lessons, I think, in the beginning of this season, at least. Um, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah. How do you think that you created that boundary? Because so often I think that people become so infatuated with a particular part of their life that becomes like the entire pillar of their life, rather than having like a pillar of family and a pillar of work and athletics and whatever presence you want. But you're basically building this house and you have these foundations. And so I do think that a lot of people tend to over overbuild one pillar, and then once that pillar crashes, then the rest of their house crashes. But how did you find a way to start to break those up and say, okay, this is volleyball, this I'm not going to be a fanatic all the time about volleyball, and
Mhm.
like when I go home I'm going to be with Sam and I'm going to be like Eric, not volleyball Eric. I'm going to be
Mhm.
family Eric, rather than always
Mhm.
being in that mode. What were some tools that you used to find that space?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of truth to what you said there with the foundations, um, and like identity and stuff. And I think it was just kind of coming to grasp that I'm not like this is a big change for me. Like I'm not gonna be the best at volleyball. Like I'm not gonna I can't pull my worth from how I'm doing on the court. Like I can pour what I have into it, but I can't like pull my happiness from that. And back to what we talked about earlier with kind of just like stepping away from everything and like working on more of my spiritual foundation too. Like having like my spiritual foundation as a pillar, I think really helped my like career pillar and my family pillar just kind of grow and not almost like keep those down and not let those take over one another, and really keep everything in balance. Um, I think, yeah, just like, and then like communicating that with Sam too, because like we're now living together overseas. It's just us over here. It's a lot of time together. So I think that was like figuring out like, okay, like when I get up, like I need like an hour to do my own thing. And then we'll like have breakfast and play crib or something.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, okay, cool. Because it was kind of working out to be like, we'd hang out together all the time. And then I'd be at practice and she would get kind of some alone time. But then I'd come back and then we'd hang out. And I was like really not getting any time just for my own thoughts and like kind of stepping away from everything. So just like communicating through that was, I think, really big. And like you said, like making sure that like other areas of my life are being planted versus just focusing it all on one, because if if you focus it all on one, then it all just kind of can come crashing down. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, those are some strategies we use.
Yeah. How do you, like, for me, I'm someone that's super agreeable, so I constantly have to push myself to say no to things and to have difficult conversations. Like, I'm a total people pleaser.
Oh,
Um,
same.
how do you, yeah, how, so I'm interested in how you start that conversation, because that's such a tough conversation to have, even though I think that maybe it shouldn't be, but it is
Mhm.
a tough conversation to say, hey, I don't feel like I have enough time to myself. Like,
Right.
I think that for me, when I've had to draw that line with people, it makes me feel as if I'm like pushing them away and down, rather than like, hey, I need to build myself as well, and I can't
Hmm.
be with you all the time. I need
Hmm.
time for me, and I find that's a difficult conversation to initiate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge people pleaser, um, and it's so tough too because like I want to be a good man. Like I want to be like there and like always supportive and all this stuff. But I think it came down to like okay, like if I want to be my best, I need to do this. And something that I think I learned from a young age was just it's always better to talk about it like right away versus like putting it under the rug, because then it's just going to build up and then maybe cause something bigger than needed to happen.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of the saying that like put the flame out when it's small, like don't let it turn into a forest fire.
Right.
So yeah, just like having that conversation maybe when it's a little bit hard is better than having it when it's like, okay, I'm just exhausted or like super frustrated, or because I'm so exhausted, I'm gonna like maybe be more angry than I should be, or
Hmm.
kind of lose my cool. So yeah, just really being conscious of yourself, knowing that it's better to talk about things kind of first and upfront, than even though it may be really hard, is going to benefit you in the long run. And then if I think about it like that, I'm like, okay, I don't want to have that thing happen. Like I'm gonna just do it now. Like gotta man up basically. So
Hmm.
that's kind of my strategy with it.
Yeah. There's this really cool, I would say he's a philosopher kind of, but also a psychoanalyst. That was what he mainly was, but I think that he ties lots of things with spirituality and religion and um, psychology, and he has this idea of the shadow, where if there are these things that we kind of put to the side,
Mm-hmm.
and there are things that we don't acknowledge about ourselves and the environment around us, and if we don't acknowledge those things, then they just continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh
and
yeah.
and Stephen Hawking talks about it in his book A Brief History of Time, where he says, if you like, it takes lots of effort to maintain a home or a room,
Mm-hmm.
and to make something look good. Like, you have to paint a room, but if you step away from the room and you leave it for a year, then the whole house is going to slowly become consumed by all of these things that you're going to have to fix later, and it's going to take way more time than if you just maintain it. And that's this concept of entropy, is that everything is in a state of chaos. It's moving towards chaos. Things don't move towards order without effort.
Oh man, I think that's so true. Yeah, I think that just honestly applies to everything.
Hmm.
Even as something as simple as like doing the dishes. Like
Yeah.
if you don't do them, they'll just keep piling up, and then you won't want to do them even more, and then eventually you're not going to have a clean plate to eat on, and
Yeah.
then it's going to be like an hour of work just to eat,
Hmm.
something like that. But yeah, that's a really cool thought. I like that.
Yeah. I think you'd like Jung. You seem like a guy that would be into that.
Yeah, you should send me his book after.
Yeah. Um, I want to ask about nationals. I've seen a lot of things about. I think especially with volleyball in North America or sports in general in Canada in particular. I think the NCAA is going. They're trying to go.
Hmm.
Um, but people are away from sport, and how you and your team coped with being a favorite going into nationals, sweeping the U of A in the Canada West final, and then did you guys get to Manitoba? Like you guys were in Manitoba, you're ready for your kind of hometown national debut, and then everything stops. The world, everything gets thrown into disarray. There's no
Yeah,
nationals for the first time in what, like 60 years, something like that.
something like that. Yeah. Oh man, that's a tough weekend for sure. Um, so we won Can West on Saturday, and we left for nationals on a Tuesday. Um, and like we won Can West, and it was great. But we were already just so dialed. Like the guys who had won nationals the year before, just and lost the nationals the year before that,
Hmm.
were just like so conscious that like this means nothing. Like it doesn't matter. Like when I was in my second year and we won Can West, we are like, yeah, we won Can West, and then we went to nationals and got pumped in the final,
Hmm.
and we're like, oh, no one cares that we won Can West. Like nationals is the one that matters. So, and then in my third year, when we lost Can West, we were like, oh man, that sucks. But like we were so dialed going into Laval. And then we beat Brandon, and that was like unreal. We hadn't beat them all year,
Hmm.
and we beat our nationals. And then no one remembers like we're the national champions that year.
Yeah.
So I think we had that same kind of core guys still for that my fourth year, and we were like, okay, we won, that's great, but like nationals is the target, and we were dialed in and focused for that. So we got there on a Tuesday, we trained Wednesday and Thursday, and each day it kind of like we heard a little bit more news about COVID.
Hmm.
Um, and Wednesday was like, oh man, like this COVID thing's like there's maybe like a 10% chance that we might not have fans or something. Like, oh, that's ridiculous, but whatever.
Hmm.
Like, then Thursday, we're at morning surpass and we find out there's going to be no fans allowed. Only 50 people in the gym. And we're like, what? Like, I was like, man, like that's the best part about these tournaments. And like Manitoba, like historically has sweet fans for these types of events. Like they have a pretty big volleyball community. Like Can West there, and my first year was amazing. And like I knew like so many people from Steinbach would be out supporting me, and that would like make it special. We were playing the home team in the quarters, so it was gonna be wild. Like it was gonna be awesome. So that was a big dagger, but like okay, like we're still here to win nationals. Like control what you can control. Like we're gonna do this thing still. And then it was Thursday night before we were supposed to play Friday. Thursday night it was pretty late. It was like around 10, I think. We were grabbing like a bite to eat maybe at the hotel restaurant, and Ben like called a meeting, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like, why are we having a meeting now? Like something must have happened. Like not thinking anything serious, but maybe he wants to talk about something. Like we had our full staff there. So there was about 30 of us, I want to say 25 to 30 of us in this room. And he just kind of walked in and like to the front and just said like they've pulled the plug, they've canceled the whole thing. Um, this is going to be like our last moment probably all together. So it was just kind of like, some guys thought he was kidding at first. Most of us were just like, what? Like, he's like, and it just turned into, it was honestly a really special night. We probably spent, I want to say, like an hour in there. Guys, it kind of turned into like a seniors night times two,
Hmm.
I want to say, but like just with so much more heartache. Um, Guys were talking about like me and Kern and Pierce and Jordy, a lot of tears, a lot of hugs. Um, and I think just the saddest part was is we never got, like we were a really great team, and we never got to, like, we were just ready to like showcase everything we worked for all season over the next 3 days. So that sucked, and then that we didn't get to celebrate together one last time. Um, like if we would have known that the Can West final was our last game together, then we would have like celebrated. Like that would have been just amazing. But yeah, that's just the toughest part is we never got to celebrate together for one last time. And yeah, it was a real emotional night. Um, a lot of tears, a lot of great stories. Um, it was cool to see like even the young guys on the team were just so heartbroken for us old guys because like we had grown like so close with them over the year, um, and they just wanted like us to play so bad.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, man, it was tough. That was a tough night.
Do you want to end it there? That seems like a pretty.
Um, I'll just say that like Ben Ben was like such a great leader about it. He was just said like there's like literally nothing you can do, and you guys should be so proud of like what you've accomplished this season and who you guys are as men, and yeah, that we shouldn't, that it's like not like there's nothing we can do and we shouldn't dwell on it. And just that he was so proud of us and he would just wanted us to have another chance to play together. So yeah, Ben was great about it, and it was great to be together in that last moment. But it's crazy to think about even now. Like we haven't all been together in a room like since that night because we all kind of went our separate ways. Like I stayed in Winnipeg for the weekend still, and yeah,
Mhm.
mm-hmm. On it there.
Okay, now I want to dig into other stuff. Are you still good? Do you have time?
Oh yeah, man, I got lots of time.
Oh, killer! I'm having a great time. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great.
I want to know what you think about control. Obviously, you alluded to it a few times. You have alluded to it a few times in general, and the things you can control when the fans get canceled, and then the things you can control when volleyball itself gets canceled. And I want to know what the philosophy on the team was and what your philosophy is towards control.
Yeah, so the year before in Laval, that was a huge theme for us. It was actually brought up by he coaches on the island, Abe Vender. I don't know if you know him,
Nope.
but he comes to our nationals every year. He's a Cairo guy, so he comes to our nationals for the weekend. He's hilarious, but he was big on like controlling what you can control. Like, and we talk about this all the time. Like, okay, what you can control? What you can control, like your body language. You can control like the words you say, like how good of a teammate you are. You can control all the work you put in and the preparation you do, but you can't control the fans. You can't control the bad call by the ref. You can't control what the other team says. Um, and yeah, and that was just a huge kind of, I think, philosophy for us that would just keep us grounded um, and connected. Like even if guys were playing bad, they had the choice to be a good teammate, and the guys who were playing good had a choice to build up the guys who maybe were struggling. So all about like choices and just knowing what you can choose and how your decisions will affect others. I think, especially I remember in my third year, That was just a huge theme. And I think it just like makes everything like put into perspective, because I think there's so many athletes that go out and get so frustrated at what the ref does, or like at some emotional thing that really makes them play worse in the end.
Mm.
And I think that's the biggest part about it is control you can control, because you don't want to get sucked in by all the other BS essentially. Like
Mhm.
that's what it is in my opinion.
I remember in your third year in the semis versus TRU, um, in the it was the game, like it was the last game, and it was it was super frustrating for me. I was on the bench, but watching you guys play as a team, I think it was one of the only games of the year that you hit negative or close to it. I don't think Jesse was having a good game. Um, Aaron was going off, and Jackson was going off, and or no, it would have been Aaron and no, Pierce
Is
was hurt,
there
so it was Aaron and Jackson. Um,
mm-hmm.
and then Kern was having an okay game, and I remember being frustrated because our team would come in and everyone would be kind of down because we'd be down, and it was this weird feeling of like we're not losing to like superstars right now. Like Lepke and Elser are not doing great, but it was frustrating to see our body language compared to yours, because you guys were always so engaged with each other
Mm-hmm.
and super upright and supportive. And it didn't look like you were having a bad game or Jesse was having a bad game or Kern was having an okay game. It's like we're losing to two really good middles right now, and it looks like we're like being smacked around by the entire team.
Hmm. That's super cool. Yeah, I think that's another kind of mantra that um, always kind of rings in my ears is play the day. So it's just it's a golf analogy. I don't know if you golf, but sometimes you'll go on the course and like you'll be slicing, and you kind of got to play that shot. You got to maybe like play your slice, and other days you'll be hitting a draw. So just really, if I'm like maybe struggling a little bit offensively, and I got to still choose like, okay, I'm struggling offensively, but I can still really dial it in on reception. I can still like cheer on my guys and like
Mm-hmm.
put in good energy, and I can still like talk and like talk about strategy and stuff. Like I'm so that even if I'm struggling a little bit with spike, and then I can think of like, okay, if I'm struggling, maybe I'll go to a little more like wipe dunk game. Just get some recycles so we can run the middle or something. So I think those two go hand in hand. Like, okay, that's not going well for me. I can choose. I can control if I can choose to get frustrated with this, or I can choose to just like let it be and focus on other things that are going to help the team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I think all of us, we're not out there to, I'm not out there to be good, just me. Like I'm out there to win as a team. And if I have to have a bad game hitting percentage wise, like it doesn't matter to me. I'd rather win as a team. Um, yeah, that's what I think I got to say to that. I remember that game now. I was frustrated with myself after, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, during the game, I was like really just trying to just like pour in to the other guys.
Yeah, well, I remember you had Daubert, who's arguably one
Yeah.
of the best players to come out of like NCAA. I think he was probably better than Patch while he was at BYU. And the
Yeah.
guy's just a freak. He's like super smart, huge, massive dude. And then I think Jesse had Napolitano, who's one of the best opposite side blockers I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but you guys just know you played your role. And there's this book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by this guy Shunryu Suzuki, and he talks about control in like the only way to control someone is by encouraging them to be themselves and allowing them to be, he calls it mischievous. Like you want people to kind of have the freedom to do what they do. And he talks about, so the way to control a herd of cattle is
Mm-hmm.
not to put it into corrals. You don't want to put them into tiny little pens where you have complete control over everything you do, or else they'll rebel. What you want to do with the cow and a herd of cattle is to put them into a big open field and put a fence around that big open field, because then they have this, you're controlling the place that they can move around in, but you're giving them this kind of illusionary control where
Mm.
you're encouraging them to move around and be themselves, but they're in this larger framework.
Oh man, I love that. You got a lot of books you need to send me.
Yeah, man, I'll put together a list.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool thing. I think that's so true. I think that almost goes back to what we were talking about earlier with like that's the same principle as being free.
Hmm.
Like with an athlete, if you just put them in like no, you can only do this and this and this, and you can't do this, then it's not gonna let them grow and be free. It goes along with it totally.
Yeah, I think that's really tough as an athlete, and I think it's a lot of pressure as a coach to allow for freedom because you have to watch so much failure.
Right.
Like my good friend Ken McLaughlin, he does the whole pursuit volley thing, and one of their principles, they have three principles, and one of their principles is finding a different way to approach failure and fear, and how you shouldn't have this fear of failure because like you need to fail to become better. It's, you see
Mm-hmm.
it time and time again in lots of autobiographies and any personal anecdotal stuff. There's always this failure before you achieve something. Like nobody walks into a gym and is immediately an all-star. Like
Right.
there's a process to get there, and there's lots of, like I talked a little bit about it earlier with the acetylcholine and norepinephrine, how you need to fail, and that's how you, like, you're, by failing you're approximating the things that work.
Yeah.
So if you fail, you realize that didn't work. And I don't know, a good example is like with a like when you're playing with a kid, like a young kid,
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of playing tag, or they're trying to slap you around or something, and you're constantly moving your hands away, and then occasionally you let them hit you, and then they get a little bit better, and then you get a little bit faster,
Yeah.
and then they're constantly chasing. It's this game of cat and mouse where you're pulling them, and all they're also pushing themselves to achieve that goal. And then it's actually cool because there's this other neurochemical dopamine, which is it's a um, reward based on external motivation. So
Right.
it's things outside of ourselves. Serotonin is something that's, like you talked a little bit about posturing, and serotonin
Mm-hmm.
controls posture, and that's the feeling that we're okay where we're at right now. So
Mm-hmm.
so if you're at the, like a chimpanzee at the top of a dominance hierarchy has the highest serotonin, its chest is always out, it's stoked, whereas something at the bottom, it doesn't want to be there, it's really curled in. But so
Mm-hmm.
dopamine is this neurotransmitter that enables us to understand that we want something outside of ourselves, and it rewards us for reaching for that thing outside of ourselves. And
Right.
so that's the feeling that when the kid actually strikes your hand, then they get a release of dopamine. They're like, whoa, that was really sweet. And then
Mm-hmm.
that encourages them to keep going. So it's this positive feedback loop, but you have to fail to get that dopamine release. And then once
Right.
you succeed, dopamine release, and then you're more okay with failure because you know that that's part of the process, at least from a neurochemical perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cool, man. I've heard of man, I was playing with that a little bit this year actually with I'm forgetting the podcast. So Joe Rogan, he's like a neuroscientist at Stanford, I think.
Andrew
Uh,
Huberman.
yeah, yeah, his work's great, man, and like
Hmm.
that's all like reminding me exactly what you're saying about like positive feedback loops and like you can actually like create dopamine for yourself by like having external rewards um,
Hmm.
or internal rewards. I think it was, um, and like really high end athletes are just so good at doing that to like keep pushing the boundaries and keep getting better because they know how to create dopamine like for themselves almost. And I think that is fascinating. It's something I've been trying to like play with. Like, how can I? Okay, I'm exhausted, like, but I need to like get this lift in. How do I like get a little like reward internally for me to like push through to this next thing, you know?
Hmm.
I love that stuff. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's super cool. I think that, like, for me, I've found that having, well, not necessarily just for me, but from what I've read and from what I've experienced, it's really important to have long-term goal, and then incremental goal that allows you to achieve that long-term goal. So each incremental goal should be a step in achieving that long-term goal. And then one step further, that the young guy I was talking about earlier, he has this super cool concept of push pull in personality development. So he has this design in this book Ion, and it's like two pyramids stacked on top of each other, and one of them is the self, and so that would be the archetypal Christ figure, or you could say Buddha, or anyone that's really at the top of like, I want to be that person. That person is morally sound. They tell the truth. They always do the right thing. So that's the top, and that's kind of what we can see ourselves being one day in an ideal world. If we push ourselves to become that ideal version of ourselves, that's what he called the self.
Okay.
And then that's its own pyramid. And then on the flip side, there's kind of a shadow version, where if you don't do the things that you want to do to achieve that like that perfect version of yourself, then what are the things that's going to happen to you? So you can either ascend or descend by what you choose to do on a daily basis and an annual basis, monthly basis, whatever you want. If you and even it even comes to that idea of entropy, where like if you just sit down and do nothing, what happens? Like there's no stagnancy. You devolve. But if you do the things that you like, you know that you're being a rascal. If you keep doing those things, how do you devolve into this kind of shadow form of the self?
Oh man, that's so cool. I love that. Fascinating stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Back to like the little increments with the goals thing too.
Mm-hmm.
There's like this Huberman talks about like why the Navy SEALs are like the Navy SEALs. And
Right.
talking to some of the guys is like, they're not like, because they have to go through like a crazy training camp.
Yeah,
Like it's nuts. And the guys who make it through like literally go through like, okay, just get through like this like next second. Like they literally go like second by second in their brain. And like they just keep going. Like they've broken everything down so small. And on the volleyball court, I've really been trying to do that. Like, okay, like just focus on this pass. I'm not thinking about my approach. I'm not thinking about my spike, nothing. Like just if I can keep putting all my hyper focus on this one action, then I can push myself to the end versus like, oh man, I got to get through this whole game and do all these things. And like, I'm going to be thinking about all those things versus just like narrowing that down, like as small as you can. And then you put all your energy and focus on that is going to be way better than if you try to think about everything. So I think that totally links to what like your long-term, short-term goals. Yeah.
For you, I wonder if that translates into this, because whenever we'd game plan against you guys, it was always toughest for you, because like I'd watch Kern, and Kern's gonna like you have to clamp him down the line and push back in, or with Pierce, he's gonna C5 hit 5 turn back. Everyone kind of has their thing, but it was always tough for you because you never did the same thing twice. Like you would smash a ball cross, and then you would go over the top in a roll shot, and you just had such a large repertoire, and it didn't seem as though you were thinking before the play, I'm going to go up and smash line, or I'm going to go up and swing high cross. It was always an in the moment, everything was situational about it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's I feel that when I'm like, that to me is flow state, is when you're not thinking and you're just doing. And I was just reading the other day about Bill Russell, like being in, and like he would talk about when he was in flow state, how everything was just so slow. Like he knew what was going to happen. He knew like what plays are going to happen. He felt like even though like he was like sweat and blood, basically, like he was like so alive and so awake and so present. And the interesting thing is he talks about like those moments happen like 10 to 15 times in my career, he said. And he's like, it didn't matter if we won or lost. Like I was just like on like a high.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow, that's like crazy flow state. I think there's a different flow state that you can get into of just like reacting in the moment. But that's super interesting you say that, because I also remember like Gino, my junior team coach, he always talked about, he was like, I never hit the same shot twice in a row. And that always like rung in my ears. I always tried to be like unpredictable in
Mm-hmm.
a sense. Um, so yeah, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was always fun and super annoying. Fun to watch, annoying to play against. What's been your experience with the national team? Like being a younger guy, I assume you were at least close to the list for this Olympic run, but being a younger guy stepping into the role of being part of the up and coming class in the national team program. How's that been? What's your experience with that? How did that feel when you first started getting into it? Like as you were younger, did you ever expect that was a thing?
Um, yeah, it's been a great experience. It's I think I'm super fortunate to be able to have played some international ball while also playing in youth sports,
Mhm.
um, because it gave like, it didn't just help me. Like I think it helped like our team, because it was kind of like a more of a connection to the international game and the college game. So I remember my first time, it was after my second year, I got named to the long list on the VNL roster. This was with Antigua, his first, second summer. And I went out there early, and a bunch of the guys weren't back yet. And I was like playing with all the A team guys that were there. And I was just blown away with just the demand for perfection, and like um, just like the next level, right? Like you come out of high school and club, and it's kind of like, okay, like these are the standards now. But then you adapt and you get used to it, and then maybe you get maybe too good for it, and it could like bring you down a little bit. But then getting thrown in this, it was like a whole new, just like brain stigma. Like I was just like talk about like push pull. Like I was failing a lot, but I was learning. I felt like I learned more um, in those scenarios. So I ended up like, I felt like I learned a bunch, and I learned a bunch in those like month of training, but I didn't get to go anywhere for VNL. And then I ended up training with the B team for most of the summer. It was still good quality training, like in the weight room and everything. But then at the end of the summer, there was a couple injuries, and I got pulled up with the A team again. And I just felt like kind of all the like maybe work I had put in that summer just like came out in those like month that I was with the team.
Mhm.
And I was like just like cognitively like so much more aware, learning new stuff, just a higher standard. Um, and then going back to school for my third year, I remember like going to the gym and like trying these new shots, like trying like this lefty dunk, trying like jump back spike line, different like wipes and things, different things on like a hybrid float serve that I learned, and then talking to my teammates about it, talking to Ben, Jill about it. So I think it was like being able to play, getting the opportunity, like, and I think I was a little bit lucky with some of those injuries, but getting the opportunity to play with the A team quality guys just like showed me, it gave me a clear view of what I wanted. And it also like improved myself, and like almost like new capabilities like emerged from that, if that made sense.
Mhm.
um, and you like find more about like your game, and more about like your style, and more about um, things you want to try, and then it opens up your brain for even more growth, I think.
Mhm.
So to sum up your question, I'm super thankful I got the opportunity to do that. And then I think it for sure played a huge role in a lot of like a bunch of my maybe university success, just like getting that exposure and being able to try new things, and feel comfortable and confident doing that.
Mhm. What's been the what's been the biggest kind of advocate for you throughout your, like, in general life success? You've talked a few times about lessons that you've learned early about conflict resolution, and like, does that come from a family place? Does that come from a spirituality place? Where do a lot of your life lessons come from? What's your foundational build?
Great question. I think a lot of my foundational build for sure comes with my spiritual foundation, but also a lot of things. So my parents went through a pretty messy split when I was at the end of 8th grade, and it lasted all through to high school. And it was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to leave Manitoba
Mhm.
and went to Trinity. So it was really messy. I'm not gonna lie. And me being the oldest, I found myself being the mediator a lot, and being the mediator, probably one of the only people who like talked to my mom and talked to my dad. And and I kind of emerged as a conflict like solver, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And really, one, yeah, I became a mediator, and two, it like really emerged my I don't want conflict, but I know what conflict can cause.
Right.
So when I talk about earlier, like knowing that I should talk about something when it's a little bit hard, I think that emerges from maybe my experience with my parents being like, okay, I don't like conflict, but I don't want like really bad conflict because I dealt with that a lot and it sucks. So I'm going to try to do what I can to not get that kind of conflict. I'll settle for a little bit of like maybe hard discussion, if that makes sense. But the older I get, the more I think the lessons of that whole divorce really show up in my life, and really motivate me a lot with like the kind of man and husband I want to be, um, and what I don't want to be. And yeah, I think, yeah, like experiences when you're a kid, I think they really do echo like throughout your whole life.
Mhm.
Um, so for me, that's a huge thing. And then like joint with my spiritual beliefs, I think that like combination almost creates a lot of what I value and what I am trying to work towards, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been reading a bunch of Joseph Campbell lately, and he's a kind of generalist, really big into mythology and religion and the role that it plays in culture. And
Mhm.
I think what I've realized from him is that, like, these books, like any religion, mythology, things that people believe and that kind of create this culture for us, they're really at their, if I were to boil it down to the simplest form, I'd say that they're like it's a self-therapy book. And I think that
Mhm.
that's something that we've kind of lost over
Mhm.
the past few years, over the, I'd call it like the modernization of spirituality. Maybe like people are moving away from books and
Mhm.
storytelling, whereas 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago in Egypt, if there's a problem, like you're having an interpersonal problem with someone, then you talk
Mhm.
about Osiris. and and if you're like a Viking, then you talk about Thor and Odin and the problems that they face and how they deal with these issues. And it stops things from being so kind of rigid and like, oh, you have to go talk to someone. And you're not hearing that from your parents in those situations. You're hearing them from like literal gods, like
Right.
these things that are much bigger than us. And it's kind of, I
Mhm.
would say, the most for me, the most salient example is the David and Goliath story, and how that's this story of being an underdog and being too small for a situation, but succeeding by putting yourself out there and taking the leap to actually strive for that thing.
Right.
And I feel like we've kind of lost that over time. And I actually think like this is something that I'd love to talk to Benjo about, is how
Mhm.
storytelling creates culture and team. And in your guys' situation, I would say one of the best teams to emerge from North America in the
Mhm.
past 10 years, or one of the best programs at the very least. And so like I'm really interested in that aspect of religiosity and spirituality and mythology is how we can use these stories to educate ourselves, because so many people have these epiphanies when they read stories and go like, whoa, that mirrors my life. That's this archetypal story that tells my story just in different terms with these figures that are a lot bigger than myself, and then I'm able to tailor my experience to that.
Yeah, wow, I think that's amazing, man. Like storytelling to me is such a great way to understand things, right? Like even Jesus taught in parables like all the time. Like that was the
Hmm.
way he taught things for people to understand.
Right.
Um and even like I'm listening to this podcast about like kind of the foundations of like human morality and like the Bible and stuff, and it's really interesting. It's actually a Jordan Peterson lecture.
Hmm.
Um, it's really interesting just to hear like his thoughts on it, but just about like how people maybe the Bible specifically like take some of the stories too literally,
Hmm.
and then they just like throw the whole thing out the window when there's like so much they could learn like just from these stories and apply to their lives. Um, and then what you talked about with like the like people not like going to the gods or that's so true. Like in the last whatever couple centuries, that's really like only been a thing, you know,
Hmm.
like for the rest of human history, like people always went to like the hierarchy of spirituality for everything. And they feared the spirituality of everything.
Hmm.
Um, and I think in fearing, like you talk about like being a God fearing person, in fearing like that, like to me, if I fear God, then I'm not fearing life stuff. But if I don't have that, then life things start to freak me out.
Right.
Um, and like the anxieties and the pressures of things are all on me instead of on something else.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's a topic that you could dive into super deep, but you should for sure reach out to Benjo and get him to talk about that because he's so great with like I can think of so many stories that he's used to inspire me as an athlete. Like, and then he turns the stories into mantras.
Hmm.
Um, like one of them I can think of is he talked about Muhammad Ali, and I forget who he was boxing. Maybe it was Joe Frazier. That's probably wrong. But he like he kept calling him like Cassius Clay, like in all the interviews and stuff. And Muhammad Ali was like switching his name. So then he's like in the ring with him and he's like knocking him out. And he's like, every time he pops him with one, he's saying like, what's my name? What's my name? Like, and he just like keeps going like another one, what's my name? Until he like knocks him out. And, and then Benjo makes that into a mantra, like, what's my name? Like he'd say that before a game or something. Like, just keep going, like keep popping him. Like, what's
Hmm.
my name? Like, who are we? You know? And I'll always remember that. I could go on with so many examples, but you should really get him on here, man. I think what you're doing is great, and I love the questions you ask. And yeah, you'd be a great guy to have on here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think that'd be a ton of fun. I'd really like to dig into a lot of things that number one, I've heard about him, and number two, that I'm just curious about his presence. And I think that the great coaches that I've met that aren't just not strictly in the sense of volleyball coach, like win-loss column, but the coaches that have developed people to the highest extent, I
Hmm.
think are great storytellers. Like
Yeah.
lots of coaches that I've met are actually almost every coach that I've had through my volleyball career. I've been super fortunate to have really good coaches, and my favorite coaches are storytellers
Oh,
because
absolutely.
they just make things so relatable, and it's not just numbers and angles and platform, but it's like this underlying consciousness to our culture and to humanity. Like they bring these things out of the depths of our minds that show us the things that we're capable of and the things that are possible in the world, rather than
Mhm.
just saying ball nose angle, hit the ball at your highest contact point. It's these stories that motivate us and that allow us to grow.
Oh yeah, man, that is so true. Yeah, I have so many stories that are just like coming to my head now. Yeah, that's amazing. You got to get him on here. I think it'd be great. And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, wow,
yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
absolutely.
All right, man. I think I'm out of questions. We've got to do this again though. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah,
I gotta go
awesome.
back to the drawing board.
Yeah, that was amazing, man. This is great. Just letting in conversation roll. That's what you want.
Yeah, that's the way I try to do it.
Oh man, I love this. I love what you're doing, and you got to send me some books. I'll send you some too.
Yeah, I'll put together a list.
All right, man. This is sweet.
Yeah, killer. Thanks a lot, my dude. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks a ton. It
No
was
problem, bro.
This is probably one of my favorite ones I've done so far. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome. I love it. Can't wait to listen to it back.
Yeah, I'll have it out hopefully later today, and I'll post some highlights and all the clips on YouTube, and yeah, I'll send it
Cool,
out.
man. This is great. All righty.
Okay, thanks a lot, dude. Yeah, I'll send you a message. Actually, here I'll put this on pause so we can have an actual talk.
Okay, cool.